On June 23, 1997, Kristen Modafferi, a 18-year-old who had recently arrived in California, disappeared under circumstances that remain unsolved to this day. Originally from North Carolina, Kristen was a promising student at North Carolina State University and had traveled to San Francisco during summer break to study photography and explore new opportunities. She had arrived in the city just 3 weeks before she vanished. Kristen was living in a shared house in the Oakland Hills area with 4 other people and had started working part-time at a coffee shop called Spinelli's Coffee located inside the Crocker Galleria shopping center in downtown San Francisco. On the day she disappeared, she finished her shift around 3 p.m., was seen leaving the location, and was never seen again. Shortly afterward, a co-worker said Kristen had asked about how to get to Baker Beach, a coastal area known for its view of the Golden Gate Bridge. Another detail that drew attention. Witnesses claimed she left work accompanied by an unidentified man. The mystery deepened when Kristen didn't return home that night. Her housemates weren't initially alarmed, as they didn't know her well or were unfamiliar with her routines. But when she failed to show up for work the next day, it became clear that something was wrong. No one could have known that what started as an ordinary day would turn into one of the most unsettling cases of the 1990s. The question that echoed was simple, yet devastating. Where was Kristen? Kristen's parents, Bob and Debbie Modafferi, were only informed 4 days after her disappearance. When the host family she was staying with called to say she hadn't been seen in days, deeply concerned, they immediately traveled from North Carolina to San Francisco. Upon arrival, they discovered that none of Kristen's belongings had been taken, including her purse, wallet, and ID, all of which were still in the house where she was staying. Police initially treated the case as a voluntary disappearance. Since Kristen was legally an adult and in a new city, authorities believed she might have chosen to leave on her own. However, her parents insisted that this was completely out of character. Kristen was a dedicated student, quiet, responsible, with clear plans for her future, and excited about the classes she was set to begin at the University of California, Berkeley. The early investigation focused on the area around downtown San Francisco. The last solid lead was the report that Kristen had asked someone how to get to Baker Beach. Searches in the area turned up no trace of her. Kristen's image was also captured by surveillance cameras at the Crocker Galleria that day, but no footage showed who she left with. At this point, the new figure entered the scene. John Onuma. He came forward, claiming to know something important. Onuma made an anonymous call to a local news station, alleging that Kristen had been taken by 2 women due to a jealousy-related conflict, but his story quickly unraveled, and he admitted he had made it all up in an attempt to get revenge on an ex. Even so, this falsely diverted the investigation's focus for a valuable amount of time. Kristen remained missing. Time kept passing, and each minute made it harder to accurately retrace her steps. Have you heard of this case before? What do you think happened to Kristen in those first hours after she left work? Share your thoughts in the comments. After John Onuma's false statement, police began to investigate him more closely. They discovered that he had a history of manipulative behavior and had falsely involved others in similar situations. Despite this, no real connection was found between him and Kristen Modafferi. This twist frustrated investigators and caused the case to momentarily lose momentum in the headlines. Even without direct evidence, Kristen's parents didn't give up. They hired private investigators, including former police officer and missing persons expert Harold Copelson, who believed there were still unexplored details. Copelson began examining the area around Kristen's home and found something intriguing. A trail picked up by a search dog indicated her scent near Lake Merritt, but nothing concrete was found in the area. Another important clue surfaced. A newspaper ad found in Kristen's room in the Bay Guardian, which read, "Friendship for young women, fun, local, adventures, call Gary." The phone number led to the newspaper's voicemail service, and although the message seemed merely intriguing, it was never completely ruled out by investigators. Over time, technology became an ally. A later analysis in 2000, using Saint tracking doggies, indicated a possible trace of Kristen in the basement of the house where she had been staying. However, at the time, more precise testing wasn't possible, and the basement was never treated as a primary crime scene. The house's tenants, who had been uncooperative from the beginning, became increasingly withdrawn. Reports suggested that Kristen didn't seem entirely comfortable with everyone in the home. Still, there was no direct evidence linking any of them to her disappearance. As the months went by, the Modafferi family's frustration grew. In 2001, a new team of investigators reopened the case, this time with support from the FBI. During a more thorough inspection of the Oakland Hills house, dogs trained to detect human remains once again reacted in the basement, suggesting that something significant may have happened there. However, there was still no concrete physical evidence to move forward with charges or arrests. One of the most discussed theories was that Kristen had met someone mysterious in San Francisco, possibly through a newspaper ad or an early social networking platform of the time, and that this person might have taken her on a date or outing that ended unexpectedly. This theory gained traction because Kristen was known to be curious and open to new experiences, yet also cautious and rational. At the same time, rumors began to circulate that Kristen had been seen after June 23rd. One witness claimed to have seen her at a BART subway station with a tall man with dark hair. Others said she appeared to be at a coffee shop, looking confused a few days after she vanished. None of these sightings were ever confirmed. Police even followed leads in Hawaii after Kristen had mentioned in a postcard to her family that she wanted to visit the islands, but there were no bank transactions, airline tickets, or phone calls to support that possibility. Later, the FBI attempted to trace digital signals and bank activity, but everything had stopped on June 20. This reinforced the theory that Kristen had never left the Oakland-San Francisco area. Still, without additional footage, reliable witnesses, or a confession, the case appeared to be at a standstill. In 2015, nearly 2 decades after Kristen's disappearance, new technologies brought renewed hope. Advanced scent detection dogs were brought once again to the Oakland Hills residence. This time, one dog indicated a specific spot in the basement as an area of interest. A chemical analysis of the soil, conducted by independent experts, revealed the presence of organic compounds consistent with prolonged human decomposition. However, since the house had been occupied by many people over the years, the findings were not considered conclusive. At the same time, independent investigations brought John Onuma's name back into the spotlight. Although he had been officially ruled out in the 1990s, old messages and posts on online forums brought renewed suspicion. There were strange comments made by him on websites about missing persons, suggesting he knew more details than he had previously revealed. Still, legally, there was no solid evidence to pursue charges against him. Around that time, a group of civilian investigators associated with the show Unsolved Mysteries took interest in the case. They interviewed Kristen's former classmates, neighbors, and even one of the ex-tenants from the Oakland house. A new detail emerged. Kristen had reportedly told a friend shortly before she vanished that she felt someone in San Francisco was watching her. This conversation had never been officially documented, and the friend only came forward years later. In 2017, the case was finally added to a national list of high-priority missing persons. This brought new visibility to Kristen's story. The FBI confirmed they were still gathering data, although no formal suspects had been named at that point. In 2020, private investigator Harold Copelson revealed that he had received an anonymous tip back in the early 2000s, but only now was he able to analyze it in greater depth. The message spoke of a possible connection between Kristen and a group that frequented a house in Berkeley, near the University of California. According to the informant, people in that circle were involved in alternative gatherings and communicated through newspaper classifieds. This lead prompted new interviews, including one with a woman who identified herself only as Rachel. She claimed to have seen Kristen at one of those informal gatherings just days before her disappearance. The problem was that this woman had never come forward before, and her memory was vague and full of gaps. The information couldn't be confirmed, but it reignited theories that Kristen may have met someone outside her usual circle. Meanwhile, Kristen's parents created a foundation to support unresolved missing persons cases. They became prominent figures in movements advocating for the families of the missing, keeping their daughter's name alive in the media and on social networks. But the question remained, why would a smart, grounded young woman with so many plans simply vanish without a trace? Was it a poorly planned meeting? Could someone in the house have been involved? Or was it a tragic coincidence involving a stranger? Over time, the case became what investigators call cold but active, always open, yet with no new concrete leads. Kristen Modafferi was officially declared missing, but never forgotten. Her photo still circulates in awareness campaigns and on bulletin boards throughout California. In 2021, a group of investigative journalists produced a documentary on historic unsolved disappearances in the United States. Kristen Modafferi case was one of the highlights. During production, a new review of the case files revealed a detail that had previously gone unnoticed. Records of phone calls made from a payphone near the Crocker Galleria. On June 23, 1997, the same day, Kristen vanished. 3 short calls were made, all to numbers that were no longer active. While recordings of the calls didn't exist, investigators believed that one of them could have been made by Kristen. The location of the payphone aligned with the possible route she might have taken after leaving work. At the same time, civilian investigators managed to locate one of the former residents of the house where Kristen had been staying, who had moved out shortly after her disappearance. He gave a never-before-heard statement, saying he had always found one of his housemates' behavior strange, especially in the weeks following Kristen's disappearance. According to him, that roommate had disappeared for several days without explanation and returned to acting withdrawn, although no formal charges were ever brought against anyone in the house. The testimony reignited old suspicions. When informed, the police stated that the passage of time hindered any action without solid technical evidence. Even so, the renewed attention on the house's residents brought a new sense of hope to Kristen's family and volunteers. Online forums lit up with discussion once again. Had Kristen discovered something inside the house? Or had she been lured into a trap through the newspaper ad? The lack of physical evidence left everything wide open. In 2023, a group of criminology students from the University of San Diego conducted an in-depth study on Kristen's disappearance using digital modeling, artificial intelligence, and public data analysis. One of the most striking findings was the unusual movement of individuals frequenting the Croca Galleria that week. By cross-referencing eyewitness reports with camera footage from the time, they identified a tall man wearing a dark cap and carrying a backpack who appeared repeatedly in images taken on June 21st, 22, and 23, always near the location where Kristen worked. This man was never identified. He didn't appear to be a mall employee or a regular customer of the stores. The police were notified, but again, due to the poor quality of the footage from that time, it was not possible to perform facial recognition or determine his identity. Later in 2023, the Modafferi family held a new press conference, renewing their plea for any new information. They offered a reward for concrete leads, and the foundation they created began funding new laboratory tests on old samples collected from the Oakland house. Although the results were not officially released, sources close to the investigation said there were inconclusive but suggestive findings in the soil analysis of the basement. By this point, the case had become one of the most emblematic in California. The greatest frustration came from the persistent feeling that the answer might lie in details that were overlooked or lost early in the investigation. Kristen Modafferi remains listed in the National Missing Persons Database, and her face is still displayed on billboards, podcasts, TV programs, and documentaries. But the lack of a definitive explanation makes the case even more unsettling. A labyrinth with no way out, with multiple possibilities but no solution. What do you think is the answer in those first few days, or in clues ignored over time? Share your theory below and pass this case along to anyone interested in real investigations. In 2024, a new forensic technique called loop, used to track microtraces in locations with long periods of no investigative activity, was applied to the old basement of the Oakland Hills residence. The team employed this approach thanks to a direct request from the Modafferi family. The procedure indicated that, at some point in the past, there were traces of human biological material compatible with a female genetic profile. However, due to natural degradation of the elements, it was not possible to confirm whether the traces belonged to Kristen. At the same time, a retired investigator publicly revealed that years ago, he was pressured not to pursue certain lines of investigation involving the former tenants of the house. This revelation caused an uproar among supporters of the case and further fueled the idea that something crucial was neglected due to mishandling of the investigation back in 1997. Among the names that resurfaced was one of the house's former residents, who had moved to another state shortly after the disappearance. He was located in Oregon, but refused to give interviews and denied any involvement. Still, an old friend told the press that he had mentioned Kristen in a conversation years earlier, saying that that summer was the worst of his life. This type of indirect yet ambiguous statement only deepened the mystery and sparked even more theories on social media. The question lingered. Was it the result of chance, a misjudgment by Kristen, or was someone close to her hiding the truth? By this point, the case had gone beyond a personal tragedy and had become a symbol of how a mistake in the early days of an investigation can compromise the truth forever. In 2025, the Kristen Modafferi case marked its 28th anniversary. To this day, no official confirmation has been made about her whereabouts. The foundation created by her family remains active, promoting awareness campaigns, supporting similar cases, and pushing for advancements in investigative methods for long-term disappearances. Recently, the Oakland police released a statement reaffirming that the case remains open and continues to receive attention, although they acknowledged that the lack of physical evidence and contamination of the scenes in the early days remained the biggest obstacles. They also confirmed that no one has been officially named a suspect, but they continue to monitor individuals connected to Kristen's circle at the time. The basement of the old residence remains the most symbolic point in the local investigation of suspicions, inconclusive analyses, and silence. The house still stands but has been renovated and rented to new residents who constantly report visits from curious onlookers, filmmakers, and volunteers searching for clues. Despite so many efforts, the mystery persists. There is no way to say for certain whether Kristen was the victim of a trap, trusted the wrong person, or if something unexpected happened accidentally. Her story is today an open wound in the history of the United States, a case without definitive answers, where every new lead seems to hit a dead-end maze. Kristen Modafferi was last seen on June 23, 1997, leaving a mall in San Francisco. Since then, she has had no contact with friends, family, or any public services. Her fate remains one of the greatest modern enigmas. What do you think really happened to Kristen? Share your theory in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, like and subscribe for more mysteries like this. Take care and see you next time.